Hey folks, I'm upstairs in the cat haven part of the wormery, and I've got 9 bins here that I've been preparing. It's middle of January. I'm going to need castings for this spring. I've not fed these bins anything other than worm chows and my dried greens, letting them forage. Castings are ready to do. I spent yesterday going through a lot of them, and I do a hand sift separating the worms from the castings. That takes a long time. I figured, you know what? Let me take you guys along, show you how I do it, and then I'm going to answer 10 or so of the top questions that I get about worm farming. Gives me something to do as I'm doing it. If you got some time, stick around, follow me, and we'll harvest some castings, play with some worms. Let me get this set up and we'll get to it. Right underneath this table, I've got 8 bins that need to have the worms separated from the castings. Well, I got 5 of them done, and it hit me. Why don't you make a video about this? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put together a video, and at the same time, I'm going to try to answer about 20 questions that I get frequently and that I see from other videos about raising worms. I'm going to try to answer those questions the way that I see it. Are my answers right? I don't know. But I figured I'd give you guys just something to watch and something to listen to. Hopefully you get something out of it. I'm using the light method. I've got a light right up there. I'm by a window, but it's not a really sunny day, so that's not going to help me too much. I've got a computer over here, and I'm going to be watching some videos. I've got a little tin here that I'm going to put my worms into, but I'm going to basically, in this video, separate the worms from these castings. Now, what I'm going to do is probably dub this. Yeah, I don't, and maybe fast forward a whole lot. This is going to take me probably about an hour. But I'm going to answer those questions in the meantime. Stick around. I hope you get something out of it.
It's a cool remote lake up in the mountains, so the hike getting up here was definitely a challenge, and I definitely broke a sweat, so I'm excited to get in this nice cold water, cool off, and hopefully see some pretty cool fish. So let's do it.
Hey folks, one other thing. There's 3 animals in this video. The first one that can put it down in the comments, you're the winner. You will have to watch the entire video to see all 3 though. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm doing a worm harvest and castings harvest, and I'm using the light method. You'll notice I just scooped the castings out of the bin, and I put them on the tray here, kind of put them up in a little cone shape. Now the worms don't like light, so what they're going to do, they're going to all start going down, and you'll see as right there I'm kind of just picking out the worms that I see right up on the top, but I'll scrape down the castings that don't have any worms in it. I'm not trying for 100% of the worms because these castings are going to go into storage, and I want some worms in there to keep the castings active. I'm not real concerned with cocoons, although if I see them, they pop out at me, I'll go ahead and grab them up. But you can see why I was talking about this taking a long time to do. But to me, it's worth it. It's a lot less damaging and bothersome to the worms to do it this way rather than, say, using a trowel or a screen sifter. I've done it all different ways. But this way also I get the chance to talk to y'all and answer your questions for you. So probably the starting question that I get in the beginning is, what kind of worms do you need for worm farming? Well, there's 7,000 some odd different varieties of worms across the world. But for composting worms, I think there's only like 7 or 9 that you can use. And the most commons are your your red wigglers, which what these are, your Indian blues, there may be some Indian blues in there as well, your European night crawlers, and your African night crawlers. There's others, but those are the majority of the ones that are easy to find and that most people do use when they're starting a worm bin or a worm farm. I don't really have a preference as to which one I like. I did just start again with Euros. I do like them a lot. I've never had the African night crawlers. I don't know. I don't know how well they would do up here in New England. Where I keep them, the temperature range is usually between 55 and 80. And I know that the African night crawlers like a warmer temperature. So I recommend to folks go with your red wigglers. They're easy to get. You can get them online, or if you got somebody local, you can grab some up from them. Your European night crawlers, again, most places that sell red wigglers also sell the Euros. Those would be my suggestions for what kind of worms do you need. It's really important that you use composting worms. You can't really just go out to your yard and pick up the worms you see in your garden or your compost bin. Those are usually a different type of worm. And while you can use them, I have used them, they're really not the best worms for a composting bin. Question 2. How many worms should you start with? That's a tough question. Really, a lot of it's going to depend on the size of the bin that you're starting and how much food do you think you have available to them. If you're just using your kitchen scraps and that type of thing, you probably don't want to start with a whole lot of worms. But if you know you've got a good amount of food to feed them, I'd recommend starting off with 1 pound. And here is my suggestion. Take that 1 pound, split it in half. Start 2 bins. It's a lot like beekeeping. Not recommended to start with just one hive because you may look at that hive and everything looks great, but if you had another hive next to it to compare it with, you might see that one's a little bit slower than the other. And with worms, it can kind of be the same thing. 2 bins can give you a good idea as to whether one bin's doing great, another bin's not doing so great. But a pound of worms is usually a good place to start. Half pound, good place to start. 1 pound, good place to start. Question 3. What kind of bin works best? Honestly, folks, you can put worms in pretty much of anything. The biggest thing that I've seen with what kind of bin to use is what kind of bin is easy for you to handle. If you've got physical disabilities, you may not want to put them in a great big bin because they can get pretty heavy. A lot of folks use the concrete mixing bins from your regular big box home improvement store, but you can use anything down to a small Tupperware dish, not dish, but kind of a Tupperware pan, all the way up to there's the sky's the limit. You can make it as big as you'd like to, as long as it's something that is easy for you to manage. I can recommend watching some YouTube videos, see what everybody else is doing, and kind of let that help you decide which one works best for you. Feeding and care. Question I get a lot, and it's kind of an unfortunate question, but it's one that needs to be asked. Hey, Jim, my worm bin stinks. Okay. So, how do you keep the worm bin from smelling? Well, usually the culprit on a smelly bin is overfeeding. You really have to keep an eye on how much food your worms are eating before you feed them again. What I like to do is kind of just dig my hand in where I know I fed. There's still food there, quite a bit of food there. I won't feed again. I'll just let them go. If there's no food, then certainly I'll feed. If there's a little bit of food, and yeah, go ahead, give them some food, but don't overfeed. Also, be sure you're adding carbon, whether it be in the form of cardboard, shredded paper, leaves, debris from your yard. some kind of carbon source, and that'll help to keep any of the odors down as well. Remember, when you open up your worm bin, it should smell like the forest floor. What kind of food do worms eat? Well, I'll put it very simply. If it was once alive, worms will eat it. They will digest it. The bacteria will digest it. The worms will eat the bacteria. It'll be gone shortly. Kind of like when you have your compost bins. Same thing. After time, everything in there is going to be digested in one way, shape, form, or another. Now, you may have heard about yes foods and no foods. Yes foods being, oh yeah, yes, put them in there. And no foods, no, 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 don't put that into your worm bin. Take that with a grain of salt. Now, speaking of food, pretty much anything that you have that you would eat, the worms are also going to be able to eat. And even some things that you wouldn't eat. You hear about don't put onions in. You hear about don't put orange peels in. You hear about don't put spicy foods in. I'll be the first to tell you, I put all of those things in my worm bins. You just don't want to put them in such quantities that the worms have no way of moving away from them. If they don't like it, just like you throw a piece of lettuce down to your dog, the dog's not going to probably eat it. Worms aren't going to eat it either if they don't think that it's something that's going to be good for them. Go ahead, give them some space, feed them in an area, give them room to move out if they don't like it. Eventually, they will come back to it. So you'll be able to see here what I'm going to do is kind of mound the castings back up a little bit, and that gets the worms closer to the light so the worms move down to the bottom. Then I'll just use my scoop there, scoop up the castings that I've separated the worms from, and put them in the bucket next to me. So how often should you feed your worms? Well, that's a good question, and again, it comes from observation. If you put your hand down in there and you dig up where you fed the last time and there's still food in there and there's not a whole lot of worms around, that means you probably have been out of food for a little while. Good time to go ahead and feed them. Use small amounts at first. If you come back in 4 or 5 days and notice his food is all gone, maybe feed him a little bit more the next time. But if the food is piling up and you start to get that odor, slow down, don't feed him quite as much. Hey, did everybody remember you're supposed to count the animals that you see in this video? Come on, count. How many have you got so far? Let me know down in the comments. Okay, another question that I get a lot, and it's a really important question. How moist should the bedding be? How moist should that worm bin be? Well, you might have heard if you've seen any other worm videos or if you've been reading up about it, they always say kind of like hand squeezing the bedding and it looks like a wet sponge. A couple of drops fall out. And that works. That certainly works. I wouldn't really recommend grabbing a handful of your worm bedding and squeezing it because you probably got worms in it. What I like to look at is if I go outside after it rains and I go to a place where there's leaves and forest floor or even your yard, you notice that the ground's moist. It's not saturated, but it's not dry either. If you were to reach down and take a pinch of it and squeeze it together in your fingers, it's going to stay together. That's pretty much your moisture. Honestly, it comes in time. You'll be able to figure it out. You'll know when your worms are happy. You'll know when the bedding's right. You'll know when it's too wet. You don't want any standing water at the bottom of your bin for sure. But you'll be able to see if they're happy. If they're moving around, they look moist, you'll be good to go.
It's definitely a challenge, and I definitely broke a sweat, so I'm excited to get in this nice cold water, cool off, and hopefully see some pretty cool fish. So let's do it.
Question I get is, what makes a good bedding for your worm bin? Well, probably the most common would be your shredded cardboard, shredded newspaper, coconut core, peat moss. I like dried leaves. Easy to attain. It's got lots of nutrients for the worms, and, well, worms live in leaves and that kind of thing. Dried grass. You got weeds out in your yard? Grab them up, throw them in there. The worms will love it. And another very important question. What temperatures are safe for your worms? Worms, composting worms, thrive in temperatures between 55 and 80, 85 degrees Fahrenheit. You get them too hot, you're going to get that smelly bin. Too cold, well, they don't take it very well. Extreme heat or cold can cause stress or even kill them. And the last question for the day, number 10. How long until you get castings? It's a good question. And there's a lot of variables that play a part in what kind of castings and how soon you get them. Pretty much, depending on your feeding, your temperature, the amount of worms, expect finished castings in about 3 months. Now, it could be a little bit quicker, could be quite a bit longer. Keep an eye on your bin, observe it, see what they're doing. Don't forget they need to be fed carbons and your greens, and down the road, it's a patience game. It really is a patience game. But as long as you're doing everything right, you can expect your castings in a couple of months. So now would be the time to start your worm bins if you haven't done it already. Folks, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope the 10 questions kind of maybe hopefully answered some of your questions. And here is your last clue for the 3 animals in this video. Thanks for watching the video, folks. Hope to talk to you again soon.